Here today with Laquana Best, the Director of Planning and Development in the City of Orange Township. Our purpose here is to give you the state of each department, and then you can have a better view into the state of our city. As we know, and if you've been anywhere in Orange, you'll see that development is on the rise after a period of stagnation for a few decades. And now we're at the point where we're finally seeing progress. Director Best, give us some of your background.
I did go to Temple University where I received my bachelor's degree in political science. And then after that, I went on to King University where I received my master's of public administration. I did start my career in the public sector in another municipality, but then I went to the private sector where I received my skills in the compliance department. And then I came back to public sector working where I am now here at the City of Orange.
Tell me about the transition from the public sector where you started into the private sector.
Well, when I worked for the private sector, it was a Fortune 500 insurance company, and I dealt primarily with compliance. So it was great that I was able to get those type of skills and experience there and transform them into where I'm working now in the public sector
And you came to the city of Orange Township when?
in 2012
And you started out as a deputy.
as the Deputy Director of Planning and Economic Development. Yes.
And then you were elevated to the directorship.
Yes, I was elevated to the directorship and my appointment was unanimously approved by the council.
Now, tell me, we're just leaving Women's History Month, and I just have to give some mention about you've seen this throughout the county and even the state about women directors in positions like yours, in departments like yours.
It's an honor to have the confidence of the public to be in such a position that I am now as a woman, as we know that sometimes it's difficult for women to have certain titles, be in certain roles because they think that we aren't capable. But I think that now in this day and age, women have shown that we are just as capable, just as hardworking, and just as successful as our counterparts and men.
Absolutely. So you get into this position, and now you start to take on the vision. I think that when you came in, I laid out a heavy vision about making sure that our properties in Orange are maximizing their potential in terms of revenue, in terms of use to the public, so that we can ease some of the burden on the property taxpayers. How have you pursued that agenda?
Well, the fact that we've had this vision of yours, Mayor, it made it a little bit more easier. You give me the direction that you want to go, and then it's my job to see it to fruition. So that is basically what I've been doing. Um, and I can't say that I've done it alone. It takes a team, and with the mayor, with the business administrator, and with the great team that I have, we've been able to do such successful things in the city.
Now, as the director of planning and development, you just don't build buildings. You also assure the maintenance of buildings that are already here. You do some quality of life assessments as well. Just give a general rundown of the responsibilities in your department.
Absolutely. That's a great question. And something that I believe that the public definitely needs to understand what our department does. It's not just building these grand buildings that you see, it's also making sure that they're safe and compliant. So I oversee the building and construction department. I also oversee the code enforcement, which deals with the property maintenance of all the properties, commercial businesses within the city, making sure that they're safe and that they're clean and that they're livable properties within the city. We also deal a lot with rent leveling, making sure that the landlords and the owners are staying within their range of raising the rent on a yearly basis because as you know, things are trying and everyone is trying to have affordable living. So we want to make sure that we keep those strains on that percentage of raising those rents.
So, in those instances where there's a question or grievance about an increase in rent or charges that ultimately lead to an increase in rent, how do residents contact your office, and what is the procedure to follow to have those grievances heard?
You would contact the secretary of the board and they would be able to assist you in receiving the documents that are needed.
That number is very important. Please take it down because they do get calls. Those grievances do get heard by the rent leveling board. They're scheduled. They're investigated. your complaint is heard, the landlord is present or the manager is present, the tenant is present with the complaint, and a lot of times our inspectors, is that true that they come and give testimony if necessary?
Yes, absolutely. Because sometimes it's a matter of what type of improvements that you have in your apartment, and that would also determine what the increase level should be. Unless you're a senior citizen, as Mayor stated earlier, and that there is a cap on senior citizens.
Then there's also the other side. There are a number of landlords that are
Mhm.
concerned and that want to make repairs and that want to get the complaints from the tenants, but they don't get them. Tenants call the inspectors first. The landlord doesn't have a chance to
Yeah.
respond.
Mhm.
How do we communicate with landlords to give them a heads up that you have an issue and cooperate with them to get it repaired?
That seems to be one of the main, I guess, discrepancies between the landlord and the tenant. They sometimes don't understand the order. So the first thing that you as a tenant should do if you have an issue where you live, you would contact the management office first. And that should be your first call to make sure that you let them know what is going on. It's then when they
In fact, your
Mhm.
first question when a tenant calls with a complaint is what?
Did you contact your management office first?
And then what happens? I contact my management office. I get no response or I get an inadequate
Mhm.
response. What is my next step?
Then your next step is to contact the code enforcement office, and we will send out an inspector to see what the issues are, and then we will speak with the management office to get those concerns rectified.
And this could be for management for a large building or it could be for a small building where it's a two, three family house.
Any
We speak
rental
of.
dwellings.
Now, do you immediately cite landlords with violations or is there a period of time to rectify or does it depend on the intensity of the violation?
The key is compliant. So we normally will give the landlord a certain amount of time to remediate the issue. Unless it's something that's very egregious that needs to be taken care of right away, then we will issue a violation and then they would then go to court. But in the meantime, they still have to rectify the situation.
And then finally, on the inspection front, you have a task force. Explain that to us. What's their jurisdiction?
So the task force is when there's an issue that goes beyond just a minimal, there's a leak or something. It's that's happened that we require all hands on board, which would be police, fire, code enforcement, our building officer, sometimes even our health official.
And when they go in, do they give a full inspection report? What is done? Is that does that subject the landlord to a quicker abatement period or larger fines, or what results from that?
Um, we're just trying to find whatever issues that there are that each department that is there will investigate and provide their report on what needs to be fixed.
Now, you've been working with the director of DPW, who is the building official in town, Marty Mays,
Public
with your
official.
inspectors. They have, and the law department, they've come together to start to bring these matters to Superior Court
Correct.
when there are gross violations. Tell me about that process and that initiative.
Sometimes things get to that level where we have to bring in all parties, and our public officer, which is the director of public works, he will step in as well. And then when once it has to go to court, it's out of our hands as far as what can be done. Then the judge has to decide. But ultimately, what we want is compliance.
Tell me about the smaller projects where there are rehabilitations or renovations throughout the neighborhoods that used to be vacant abandoned properties. What kind of boost are we getting in revenue from those projects?
So those properties where we were getting no taxes, now they're now paying their fair share, and we're receiving the taxes which are comparable to what the other tax owners are paying as well.
So it becomes kind of equity in terms of property owners, everybody chipping in to pay their fair
Absolutely.
share. First, tell me about the impact of those larger projects on the local economy. What are we seeing? I know the urban enterprise zone is under your jurisdiction as well. What reports are you getting from shop owners about what the impact of those larger projects are doing for their businesses?
Well, it's not just the building; it's what goes into the building and the people that are taking part in building the building. So you have the plumbers, you have the apprentices, you have the carpenters. You have the union workers. Everyone is playing their part. Everyone is getting a piece of the pie in a sense. And then ultimately, we get a new building and we get new residents.
And then they contribute to the economy as well.
Absolutely.
So while we're on that point, we're talking about employment, at least temporary employment and seasonal employment. Tell me how you're working with the churches, nonprofits, and other groups to make sure that we have local hiring and we have minorities actually on the job, not only as laborers, but as contractors as well.
That's very important that we involve our local residents while we're building these buildings and the minorities to give them opportunities as well.
When you on some of the jobs, I've seen you when you do just your visual inspection and you have these conversations with the contractors. um, Tell me why it's important that you're asking. I've heard you ask three critical questions. One, are women contractors and laborers on the job? um, are they from Orange? And then what are you doing to train young people? Why are those three issues relevant?
They're very relevant because we want to, again, incorporate the residents that are here. We want to make sure that we uplift all types of residents that we have here, the young people, because they're the ones that are going to continue on these trades.
All these larger projects, give us an inside view of what happens at the negotiation table when someone comes to you with a concept. Tell me all of the things that are at play and what's the procedure.
Well, first, we want to make sure that the vision matches what our vision here is in Orange. Once we receive the concept plans, then we will schedule a technical review committee meeting to make sure that it's suitable and ready for the planning board
Tell me
approvals.
about that technical review committee because that's not a um, a body of the town. What does that body do?
That's comprised of the professionals within the department,
So your
which mean
engineer, your architect.
our planners, police and fire, and health.
Okay. And then tell me what happens at a TRC.
So we want to make sure that the concept itself is something that's safe and that is suitable for the residents. And that's what that particular meeting consists of before it goes to the planning board.
And then the planning board is citizens appointed, a legislative body, and they review the project.
Yes.
And they get the input of any professionals.
Yes, the planner and the engineer, and we also have a board attorney that tells us the legalities of the project.
And then that board votes to determine whether or not that project can move forward.
Correct. Yes.
Now, at the planning board, is there opportunity for public input?
Yes, absolutely. There's always opportunity for public input, and we actually emphasize that the developer at hand that they actually go into the community and holds a community meeting just so we can gather what the community really wants for that specific area.
How do you advertise those meetings? Is there a statutory requirement for putting the information out there?
Yes, it has to be posted on our city website as well as in the local newspaper.
And are these meetings virtual or are they in person?
They're virtual.
And so all the information to access the virtual meeting is available.
Yes, on the city website.
Okay. And then now you get to a point where the project has been approved by the planning board. They've gotten the public input and they're ready to build. Take us now inside to the negotiation table and the issues that you're addressing, and how you're getting us to a place where this building is good for our city.
Well, there are a few things that we definitely want to make sure that each project has for the city. We want to make sure that the revenue, that there's the assessments regarding the pilots, that they're 5 to 10 times more than what we were getting primarily before the project was even thought of. We want to ensure that parking is something that
So I'm sorry to interrupt you. So they're paying five. So if a project is paying, if a property pays $10,000 in taxes and someone wants to build there, you're negotiating so they get multiple times more
yes,
taxes on it.
absolutely.
So as those funds come in, do they go to the general fund to fund the city's budget?
Yes, absolutely. That's how the city pays their bills ultimately.
So, and I just want to get this for the residents, they need to know that these funds come in and they're increasing their fair share. And the hope is that as we get more of them to put their fair share in, single homeowners, people in
Yes.
neighborhoods can have.
Will invest in their properties as well. Yes.
Tell me, um, I'm sorry. So you're at the negotiation table. I'm really interested in this part because this is the part the public does not see.
Mhm.
These meetings are had with yourself, your team, your attorneys, and the other side. Tell me what issues are at stake.
So parking, of course, is always a major concern for everyone. So we want to ensure that there is ample parking for these projects.
So tell me about the parking. I know the on the books it says less than one-to-one parking, but there's been initiative and a strong push from council members that it be one-to-one, and even there's a push that parking, at least for one space, be free. Tell me about the what do you think of the council's position on that, and whether or not that plays into any of your negotiations?
Well, we definitely want to work together. And one of the main points of with the council people, they are out there trying to understand and advocate for what their residents would like. And parking is a major concern. So we definitely want to make sure that everyone is comfortable with that. So the one-to-one parking is something that we definitely feel is worth pushing for.
Now, sometimes you get pushback on um, space, area, and feasibility of one-to-one parking, but you've also initiated a concept where they could have elevated parking. Tell us about that.
Yes, we also are able to have mechanical parking so that there can be more spaces within that development.
And you find that's happening more and more throughout the development.
Yes.
Tell me what other issues are at stake at these negotiations.
We want to also ensure that the materials being used are ones that will be long lasting and that will be safe for the residents so that they're just not here for a few years but for 30, 40, 50 years out.
And then what rounds out your negotiations in your talks with the developer?
So even as we're back on the scene, we always want to make sure that we're in compliant with everything that we do. So there's always inspections to ensure that there's safety for the residents
So you're seeing this building from concept all the way
to
to
the very end.
build.
Yes.
Let's talk about some of the projects that you have completed, some that are in process, and those that have a vision. Tell me about the Essex and Crane. That's the first luxury building that was built in Orange, and I know it has all of the amenities. It's pretty pricey as well, but tell me about what that's doing for the revenue in the town.
Well, that used to be an old factory building, and that's what we mean by using taking buildings that are underutilized and creating revenue on that. And we're getting at least 7 times more of the taxes that we were getting previously with this new building at hand.
Now, the next phase of that is an Uber luxury building with this indoor swimming pool, all the other
Absolutely.
amenities. Tell me about revenue stream for that. I understand some of between 8 and 11 times more than you're
Yes,
getting
it
before.
is. We're going to be getting even more for the second phase, and we're also getting more than one-to-one parking for both of these projects.
Now, in terms of, and you didn't put this in your negotiations, I guess you don't want to spill it all, but in some cases, you're negotiating extra benefits that the town can receive. And this one, I think there was parking involved.
Yes, there was parking involved. So another thing with these deals that we have with the developers, we also want to ensure that the community is also receiving benefits for these developments. And whether that means, we're creating the Bell Stadium or the public library, we want to just make sure that the residents at hand that they are receiving a fruit of the labor that we're putting forth.
So now those the crane project is up and running. It's occupied. This phase two is in the throes. Um, we used to have an Elks Lodge on Main Street that was sold, demolished. What's in its place now?
So right now we just actually had the groundbreaking for the Elks Lodge about a month or so ago, and that's a $37 million project that we're putting on Main Street.
When the Elks was there, it was a nonprofit, so there was no tax revenue at
Correct.
all. So everything is a
Every,
is profit from that
everything is
from that.
profit from that. Absolutely.
Now, take me to the North Ward and tell me about what has happened there to boost revenues for the town.
So we have another development on Mount Vernon that was on underutilized land, and we created 19 market rate units there, which has created some additional taxes for the city as well.
Now that unit on-site parking as well.
Correct, on-site parking as well for those 19 units.
Now you have seen in the West Ward and the train station line. I want to ask you the newly completed residence, the Highland. Looks like a very nice building. It's among other buildings. But tell me about the negotiation that you engaged in, where across the street you got them to start developing a parking lot for those West Ward residents free for the city.
Yes, that also, the Highland is a phase one and phase two project. Phase one has just been completed, and we were able to negotiate a deal where they would build across the street, and it would also incorporate even more parking for the residents and for the not just the residents of that building, but the residents within that area.
That's sorely needed. Um, you don't get involved in the street pavings and the sidewalks. I know that's DPW, but how do you coordinate? Um, there are some projects that where the streets are terrible today because you know that you have development going on. You try to time the development with the street paving. How is that coordination with other departments in the city?
Well, again, with the community benefits, if there's projects going up, some part of the negotiation is to fix that street, to fix those sidewalks. So that kind of helps the city out as well.
Tell me how you work with police and fire and health department when you have a development coming on. I know that some people, some commuters, and
Mhm.
some residents get frustrated. Street closures, delays, and so forth. How are you dealing with that?
We always have to communicate with our other departments, and we have to let them know that, this particular project is going up and we're going to be doing this on this day, so that that communication can be let out to the entire community so they know what avenues to take and what roads are going to be closed.
Tell me about when you have these projects. It's not just putting up a building. I looked at some of your planning documents, and it included checkoffs for utilities and other ancillary interests in your development.
Excuse me, there's definitely a process. It's not just putting the building up. You have to deal with certain outside entities, PSE&G, cable, water, and those all have to be in alignment so that the schedule of construction is consistent and doesn't cause delays within the city.
Now, you've been appointed to this position. Um, it sounds like it was heavy responsibility, a lot of dollars at stake. Um, just a question for most family people: how do you balance this life with your home life, with your professional endeavors, with your training, and so forth?
Well, you have to just stay organized. You have to just put things into perspective, and you have to also just have faith.
That's what it's all about. Tell me about your other training. I know you Temple graduate, Kane master's degree. I know you spent some time in Italy studying abroad, but you've also got some specific certified training for this particular job.
Yes, I've been afforded the opportunity to be able to receive to receive certifications, and I have my planning board and zoning board certification as well as my zoning certification. It's really important that although you may oversee individuals, but it's also important to understand what you're doing as well.
Absolutely. There you have it. The director of planning and development in the city of Orange Township, Director Laquana T. Best. And her job is to make sure that we have fluid development, we have proper instructions, that our tenants are being treated fairly, and that our landlords also have accountability and fair representation as well. We bring you this series so that you can understand the state of each of the departments and therefore the state of the city of Orange Township. We'll be bringing more. Now we'll do a follow-up interview in the field with Director Best, so look forward to that. And then each department you'll hear from their directors as they do their duties in the city of Orange Township. I'm Mayor Warren, proudly serving you as I have to answer questions from the community. I'd like you to get a specific guide into the thinking, the processing, and the negotiations of our directors. I'm Mayor Warren. I'm with the Director of Planning and Development. This is the City of Orange Township.